Hello, I'm Charlie Clement and I'm studying a BTEC Level 3 in Coaching and Development Fitness. Today I am doing my Anatomy Assignment 3 video, and I'll just get it underway. Firstly, we're looking at the internal and external intercostal muscles, part of the additional information. The external intercostal muscles consist of 11 muscles that wrap themselves around the back of the ribs and to the front across the sternum. They are thicker than the internal intercostal and work alongside the diaphragm. For example, when a diaphragm contracts, the external intercostal muscles also contract, which raises the rib cage, allowing the air to reach the lungs. The internal intercostal muscles also contain 11 muscles, and they are formed in between each rib. Their function is that after the diaphragm is contracted and in its resting state, these muscles will lift the ribs and reduce the space between each one, causing the pressure to increase in the lungs, which are filled with air at the time. This is the diagram. You can see where I'm pointing here, in between the ribs. This would be where the internal intercostal muscles are, and then these ones here, they're forming around the back and wrapping around. This is the external intercostal muscles. Now we are just going on to a bit about the lung structure. The pleural membrane function is to help reduce friction within the insides of the lungs. They do this by creating a liquid which coats the insides of the lungs. Then secondly, the thoracic cavity's function is to help protect the organs in the body. It runs from the bottom of the neck all the way down to the diaphragm. This is important for protecting these organs because they are used all of the time for both the respiratory and cardiovascular systems. The function of the lobes is that they receive the oxygen from the bronchioles. These are a key figure in the respiratory system because this allows the athlete to receive the oxygen he needs to partake in his event. So, for example, Mo Farah, he needs a lot of oxygen to help supply his muscles with when he is running his events, such as the 5,000 and 10,000 meters. Finally, pleural fluid helps prevent friction between the lungs and the ribs when breathing, and it also keeps the lungs inflated. And these are just two diagrams. This here where I'm pointing is the lobes of the lungs. As you can see, it's split into 3 sections here on the right side of the lungs, and on this side it is only split into 2. This also, like as you can see here, this is where the oxygen is travelling down through the bronchioles, and it is going into the lobes and then being used, and carbon dioxide being expired as well. And then here on the right is the diagram of the thoracic cavity. You see that it's from the top of the neck about here to the diaphragm, which would just be under here, lining under here. This again is very big. It protects the sternum, which is in here, and also like your lungs and the heart. Okay, now we're going to be moving on to the types of blood vessels. Firstly, with the capillaries, these are the thinnest of the blood vessels. They are formed after branching off from arteries into arterioles, and then they branch off again and reduce in size as they become ever closer to the muscles. This is when capillaries are formed. They allow gaseous exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide to the body. They are so small that they are only 1 or 2 cells thick. These are also large quantities of them covering the muscles to allow exchange of gases to them. The reason why they are so close is so that the gaseous exchange can be done as efficiently and quickly as possible. This means that when exercising, oxygen can travel in the blood, and when in the capillaries, diffuse into the muscles as quickly as possible. You can increase your number of capillaries by doing aerobic exercise. Then over a period of time on training, this will occur, and this is called capillarization. This is an advantage for your athletes who want to improve in their aerobic endurance, because it allows for a quicker rate of gaseous exchange, and therefore will allow them to work at a higher intensity because more oxygen is getting supplied to your working muscles. Secondly, we have the arteries. All of them except the pulmonary artery carry oxygenated blood from the heart around the body. Instead, the pulmonary artery carries deoxygenated blood towards the lungs. Arteries have a layer of smooth muscle called the tunica media. This is thicker in arteries than veins. This helps with the flow of blood along the artery. They pump this blood at a high pressure, which allows it to travel around the body at a fast pace. They have small lumens which are found within the tunica intima. The lumens diameter are controlled by the smooth muscles, which are then controlled by the sympathetic nervous system. Thirdly, we then have the arterioles. These are formed when the arteries become smaller and branch off, getting closer to the lungs. They also have a very similar function to what arteries have, because they are transporting oxygenated blood around the body, and also have similar properties. They are just smaller than arteries. However, arterioles are important in blood pressure regulation, Weber 2006. They are also important because they are the most highly used blood vessels within the body and are constantly changing size to either slow down or speed up blood flow. The fourth blood vessel is the vein. These carry deoxygenated blood back to the heart after the blood has been used. The exception is of the pulmonary vein, which carries oxygenated blood back to the heart from the lungs. This is so that it can be used to be pumped around the body to the muscles. They have a similar structure to that of arteries, and they have the tunica media, which is a smooth muscle and elastic fibers found within the middle of the vein. It is smaller in a vein compared to an artery. It also contains a tunica intima. This is the inner layer of the vein and is in contact with the blood flowing through it. It is made up of small endothelial cells. It also has a lumen which allows blood to flow through it. The veins also contain valves which help stop the backflow of blood. They then return the deoxygenated blood either to the superior vena cava. However, if they have travelled to tissues or organs above the heart, or they return into the inferior vena cava, so into organs or tissues below the heart. And finally, we've just got the venules. These are tiny blood vessels which drain the deoxygenated blood from the capillaries and then branch off until they form together and create a vein. Venules have a similar structure to that of veins. They are just smaller. I'm now going to describe the transport of blood around the body. So, firstly, to start this off, the heart pumps oxygenated blood from the left ventricle, which is the biggest part of the heart due to the fact that it has to pump blood around the body over such a great distance. The blood then goes into the aorta, which is the biggest artery of the body, where it then branches off into smaller arteries. The closer the oxygenated blood is to where it needs to travel, the smaller the arteries become by branching off into arterioles. They then become smaller and the oxygenated blood travels into the capillary where gaseous exchange occurs. This lets the organs, tissues and muscles to receive the nutrients and oxygen they need whilst also producing a waste product called carbon dioxide. The CO2 then travels back into the bloodstream through the venules until they get closer to the heart and form into veins. Then, depending on where the blood has travelled, it will either go into the superior or inferior vena cava and then back into the right atrium. And from there it will travel to the pulmonary artery towards the lungs. The blood will then become oxygenated again and travel back to the heart through the pulmonary vein. This then enters the left atrium and then goes back down into the left ventricle, and this is where the whole process will start again. I'm now going to describe an oxygen molecule through the respiratory system. Firstly, the body has to breathe in for any oxygen to enter it. The oxygen either enters through your mouth or nasal cavity. From there it passes down into the pharynx, in where it splits from either your esophagus or down to your trachea. There is a small flap of cartilage which will help prevent food from going into your trachea. But the oxygen heads down then travels down past your larynx, also known as your voice box, and then heads into your trachea. The oxygen heads down through your trachea and again splits off into two separate bronchi, which heads into your lungs. From there they branch off into ever smaller sections called bronchioles. After the bronchioles, the oxygen molecule will travel into the lobes of the lungs, and then from here will be diffused into the lungs through the alveoli. This is the process which allows us to live every day, because it is giving us the oxygen which we need to breathe. This is my case study for the cardiovascular system. The athlete I'm going to use is Mo Farah. He is a 5,000 and 10,000 metre runner for Great Britain, and he won 2 gold medals last summer at the London Olympic Games of 2012. The cardiovascular system is incredibly important for the athlete in order for him to succeed in his event. Firstly, this system starts in the heart, and when Mo is beginning to run, his working muscles will require more oxygen and nutrients to be delivered at a faster rate. Therefore, the left ventricle of the heart has to contract more forcefully and frequently, squeezing the blood out of the aorta and branching off into the arteries. The blood pressure of Mo will also increase, and the arterioles leading to his working muscles, such as the muscles in his legs, will dilate, causing the diameter of his blood vessels to increase. This allows more blood to flow through at once. This process is called vasodilation. This basically allows more oxygen and nutrients to travel to his working muscles at a quicker rate, allowing him to maintain his intensity when running. This will help Mo in his races, because without this he would not be able to get this oxygen at a quicker rate, affecting the intensity at which he runs, therefore affecting his performance, and he would not have been likely to have won his 2 gold medals. The opposite happens to the muscles, which Mo does not need to use. The diameter of those blood vessels decrease because they contract, meaning less blood can get to them. This is done because muscles such as the digestive system require very little blood during exercise. This is called vasoconstriction, and this means that Mo can have more blood transported to the muscles which are important for him during the race, allowing him to work at a higher intensity and be better at his event. The cardiovascular system case study continued. Eventually, the closer it gets to Mo's working muscles, it will branch off into smaller blood vessels called capillaries. This is where the oxygen and nutrients will diffuse into the muscle and be used to create energy and allow Mo to keep running. The waste product of this process is called carbon dioxide, or CO2, and this diffuses into the venules, which is another group of blood vessels. This is then brought back towards the heart by connecting to the veins and going through either the superior or inferior vena cava, and then to the pulmonary artery, which takes the deoxygenated blood to the lungs, and from there is exhaled out of the body.